Hello, I'm Bob Ackerman, the editor-in-chief of Signal Magazine, welcoming you to our Signal Executive video, Working Toward More Agile Defense Acquisition. The public perception of the defense acquisition process is like that of the weather. Everyone complains about it, but no one does anything about it. That perception is wrong. Many people in both government and industry are working to improve the process, and a host of initiatives are geared toward ensuring that innovation is sped to the warfighter and the decision maker as quickly as possible. But acquisition is driven by laws and regulations, which of course originate from the government. For the Defense Department to truly reap the benefits of innovation, it must become more agile in its approach to acquisition. Discussing these issues and achieving this agility is today's guest, Chuck Swoboda, Lead Transformation Specialist for Red Hat Public Sector. A cleared information technology professional, he has extensive experience in delivering large-scale mission-critical products. Chuck, welcome.
Thank you.
Chuck, what challenges must the Defense Department overcome for more agile acquisition?
Well, I think a lot of this boils down to the act of kind of a big bang procurement or big bang acquisition of just going out and buying something really big from a systems integrator or a traditional SI or something like that. Is kind of a bad, really an anti-pattern, right? If you look at the DoD as a whole, and for that matter, a lot of other agencies out there, they really care about three things, and that is lethality, is the weapon system, what have you, doing what it's supposed to be doing. Resiliency, how brittle is that weapon system? And agility, how quickly can that weapon system react to the newest threats that are out there, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you do an acquisition, if you start building a new system or go down a certain path based off of bundling together 5 years of requirements, in this world, there's a pretty good chance that what you define on day one of that 5 years before it hits the street is probably not going to be valid or in need anymore. And building software, building weapon systems driven software for that matter, just the wrong way to do it.
Well, you've outlined just what the drawbacks are. Let's look toward agility. What benefits will we see from the kind of agility you envision that DoD needs to achieve?
So if you look at right now, some of our adversaries like in Russia and China, they've put up the Su-57 and J-20 respectively. That's their next generation fighter aircraft. And we did not think that those things would be flying around now, but they are, right? They're up there, they're basically testing, iterating through different prototypes and this, that, and the other. They may not have the ability to carry a weapon or a radar or anything like that, but they're getting some real feedback on it, right? And so with a new threat, we need to be able to react quickly to it now that we see it. And if we move towards a more agile acquisition process, we'll be able to pivot to counter, right? And that is critically important. And not only pivot to counter, but also pivot to stay ahead of the game and remain the most dominant fighting force in the world.
That is our ability to react to the challenges that pop up. Yet we also want to be proactive in getting new technologies out that force the other guys to have to pivot and react. So that's part of agility.
Yep.
So what is the key to achieving agile acquisition?
I don't know if there's one thing. That's do what works for your agency or your program or team. I think a lot of this is going to be, again, unique to the program, obviously, as I just said. But it's about looking at really objective outcomes rather than outputs. What I mean by that is the true measure of success, and especially if you think about the Agile principles, is working software, working capability, working product, right? Back when I worked at Booz Allen, I got my PMP certification, and we were taught and instructed that earned value, which is basically the value of what you produce, you burn that every day, or you increase that every day. That earned value is not nearly reflective or as important as something that's delivered, and by delivered I mean fielded to a warfighter, fielded to the end user, and used in production, right? And so if we start measuring ourselves that way, incentivizing companies like Red Hat and other traditional SIs that way, I think we're going to see significantly better, higher quality, and more capability delivered quickly.
You were talking a moment ago about how the Russians are seeming to be pretty agile with regard to bringing out their new jet fighters. Leaving fighter aircraft out of this, what do you think is the paradigm that DoD must pursue to get that kind of agility to both stay ahead of what the bad guys are doing and react to what they're doing?
A lot of it is contracting and unwinding, unbundling decades worth of bureaucracy, right? And controls, and being able to, remember, we're going to have to take a bit more risk to do this stuff the right way. What is it? They say perfection is the enemy of good enough. Well, there's a lot of cases that we can get something good enough out to the warfighter and see how it works, and iterate and iterate and iterate, right? And provide something better. I'm reminded there is nothing more expensive than building something, especially software, that nobody wants. And dang it, if you do a big bang development cycle over 5 years, and after 5 years without getting any feedback from your users, or good feedback from your users, and deliver something, it very well and most likely is something that nobody wants them to be using. Imagine if the cell phone in your pocket was built off of requirements from 5 years ago, right? And maybe it's an Apple. Let's say Samsung's the company that's doing agile development of that cell phone. Well, they're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of what's in your pocket. That's a big problem.
Okay, so we have the case for agility. What should industry's role be in helping the Defense Department migrate toward more agile acquisition?
We have a lot to do with it, right? Again, I look at Red Hat. We've been building software for 26 plus years, right? And there's a lot of lessons learned in what we've been doing, right? That we can help teach and give back to the government. I think part of that is, we, and again, as other SIs are out there, are incentivized a certain way. We can help change the way we're incentivized by providing real actionable metrics that are basically outputs built around the outcomes. I'm talking like DORA type metrics, like lead time for change, and which is how quickly something gets fielded, or change failure rate, how often something gets out that shouldn't be there, build velocity, how often are we iterating, things like that, right? And no order, right? I think we can do a lot better job as industry by wanting and asking to be measured that way.
So industry would have to take the initiative on that.
Yeah, I mean, we are. We absolutely are. I'm working right now with the Air Force, the F-22 program office, to basically measure us and the major integrators like Lockheed better. And the beauty of it is Lockheed, working with them directly, is all on board. They want to be measured the right way. They want to be incentivized the right way. Their I guess slogan, you guess, is "We never forget who we're working for," which is a really good thing to have. A lot of these SIs and traditional vendors want to be measured and do the right thing for the government, for America, for Americans, to keep ahead of the bad guys, and also, at the same time, helping our warfighter, our soldier, love their job again.
Would you call this a win-win?
Absolutely.
Then what's holding it back?
Well, bad habits are really hard to break. I think there are, in my personal opinion, having done this for long enough, I think there's some really top brass that knows things need to change, right? Like Dr. Roper in the Air Force is one great example of that. And then there's the guys at the bottom that are living it every day that want things to change, right? Whether they be warfighters in the field or a software developer, which is the new school cyber warfire. As a software development or developer in the past, there's nothing more stifling to my psyche or innovation than knowing that my stuff would never see the light of production. But then there's something in the middle. We call it the frozen middle, and that is, again, the amalgamation of decades of bureaucracy just wired together. And as I said earlier, kind of unbundle that, right? So I think that's where we need a lot more help, is figuring out how to unbundle that, how to retask some really smart people that are probably just, again, they're really smart, but they're probably doing the wrong thing or the wrong way. And we, again, got to figure out how to unwind it and then restructure and then move forward. Moving fast is one thing, that's speed. Velocity is something different. We need velocity, and that's speed plus direction. And that frozen middle needs that direction to move fast for America.
Okay. Well, that concludes our Signal Executive video. Chuck, thank you very much for your insight. To everyone watching, thank you and have a good day.